if you don't mind, I would make my presentation in English. So if some Italian needs, there are. Okay, thanks to everybody. I'm Giovanni Benedetto. I'm part of Accenture, and I've been part of the Assoconsult organization for I think 6 or 7 years so far. Sorry.
Sempre vicino al microfono per la traduzione, se no.
Okay. Okay, we started with this survey in 2009, so this is our 4th edition of the survey. Before that, basically, we did know nothing about management consulting in Italy. The survey has been developed together with the University of Toronto Vergata. They basically developed the interviews, questionnaires, analysis, and guarantee the level of privacy that we basically need to have in such a situation. And for our FEACO guest, forget about the agenda. For our FEACO guest, I want to just spend a couple of minutes explaining the methodology and what we mean for management consulting, because, for example, there are a number of differences between the FEACO survey and our survey. First of all, well, the decision we took, and this is quite consistent over the years, is to have 3 levels of analysis. One, which is similar to the FEACO one, is the quantitative survey based on a sample. So we pick up a sample, we send questionnaire, we make interview and get back the data and then come out with the results. The sample is made up of a number of companies which are only partly members of our association. We do not consider the member of our association as a perfect sample of the population of the market. That's the reason why we decided to have part of a sample within the association and part of the sample outside of the association. But not only. In addition to that, the issue that we have to solve at the beginning was, okay, whatever sample we may build up, how can we calculate the overall population of the market? What's the overall size of the market? To do that, we did and this is in the left of the slide, we did a macro analysis based on official data, based on the data of the National Statistics Bureau, ISTAT, based on the data of the Chamber of Commerce, and we tried to come up with a number of data on the number of companies, the size of the companies, the total turnover, the total number of employees. Obviously, when you mix up the 2 things, you come out with an overall picture of the market, the overall size, and then a number of analyses on the customer base, on pricing, on trends and qualitative data, and so on and so forth, mixing the macro analysis with the sample analysis. A third component of the survey is a set of qualitative interviews we typically perform to a limited number of companies, because on top of the data, we want to get some sentiment out of the players of the marketplace. On more, let's say, on more qualitative kind of things, like, overall sentiment, strategic responses, how they react. For example, this year, the major issue was, how are we reacting to the crisis? So how companies are trying to cope with that big problem that is coming and started 5 years ago in Italy and is still ongoing. And I don't see any special light out of the tunnel, by the way, and therefore it's becoming a serious problem for our players. So that's the kind of analysis we do. And second, what's the scope of the analysis? And here there are significant difference between the Assoconsult survey and the FEACO survey. Basically, what we call management consulting is, for FEACO, the business consulting plus IT consulting. So in other words, we decided to focus on the pure management consulting activities that management consulting firms perform, and we do not include other activities which are, by the way, very important for some firms, like information system development, outsourcing, public relation, communication, legal and tax advice. So our figure focus only on the, let's say, more traditional business consulting kind of advisory services. Strategy, corporate finance, management control, etc., etc. This in terms of scope of activities. In terms of player, we do include companies that are focused mainly on management consulting services. For example, we do not have in the survey, let's say, system integrators who may do some consulting business. For example, IBM is not in the survey. SAP is not in the survey. It may be right or wrong, but that's the logic behind that. In addition to that, we do not include individual professional. We just consider companies. So these are the limits of our survey. Having said that, let's go to an overview of the management consulting industry in industry. And then the trends of the industry will be explained by Corrado Cerruti. Well, first of all, what is management consulting in Italy? We're talking about a market which is relatively small and very highly fragmented. Just to give you some figures, the total revenue we estimate is a bit more than 3 billion. A bit more than 3 billion in a country which has a GDP of 1.5 thousand billion is a very small number. There are about 18,000 companies working in that specific business. And the major companies, I'm talking about companies with more than 50 employees, make up about 45% of the market. So very fragmented, very low concentration. If you look at the graph, the micro companies, so companies with less than 3 employees, make up 85% of the firm in terms of numbers, make up almost 40% of the employment, make up 1/4 of turnover. I have to say that over the years, the situation is changing, because if we look at the market share of the large companies, and talking large means company with more than 50 employees, which in technical terms is not large, but in our industry makes sense. Large companies went from a 35% market share in 2009 to a 45% market share last year. So there has been a clear trend over concentration in the market, even though the number of micro companies didn't go down. So, in other words, the number of micro companies remained the same, even grows, with a lower and lower turnover per company. As I told you before, the share of national GDP generated by management consulting is very low, is 0.20%, taking into account that based on the FEACO report, the average of the large countries is about 0.5%. So we are less than half the average. Obviously, very, very lower than Germany and UK. We are better just than Spain. We haven't seen Greece. We haven't put Greece in the graph. And but the question is why? So why the market is so small and is so fragmented? I think there are basically two explanations. One explanation, probably the most relevant explanation, is the structure of the economy in this country. Just to explain our foreign guests, our situation is in Italy. This is the distribution of companies in Italy, not consulting companies, companies overall. Take into account that one company out of two are companies with less than 10 employees. And they make about 20% of the value added. And the comparison between Italy and the major European countries is very evident. The large corporation in Italy make just 20% of the total employment versus the 32% of the rest of Europe. So clearly, and if we that is the average, but if we compare Italy with UK, Italy with Germany, Italy with France, it's even more evident. Is even more evident. We have really a lack of large corporations in this country. The basic structure of the basic tissue of the economy is made of small and medium enterprise, well, which has been a big value so far, I have to say. Is no more a big value in the future, probably, unfortunately, given the overall globalization of the market and how difficult it is for small companies to survive in a globalized market. And I have to say that small companies really do not buy that much consulting services. This is a question we asked 1 year ago to our sample, and wanted to try and understand what hampers the growth of management consulting in Italy. And it came out very clearly that the number one issue is that the small and medium enterprise basically do not invest in consulting services. The second problem is we have a very weak public sector. So, reason number one, too many small companies. Reason number two, the public sector in Italy really doesn't buy significant consulting services. And then Giovanni then will give you more details on that issue. But if we compare ourselves with other European countries, we are about 30-40% less in terms of market share in the public service versus Germany, UK, France, and so on and so forth. I would move to Corrado Cerruti on the, let's say, on the dynamic of the market.